That's our cue for a little lesson in elocution. Repeat after me. In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
In Dane, only the brain goes down the drain.
No, B. It's rain, not brain. Once more. In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
I think you've got it.
In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
Well done.
In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
Keep leaves out of the street. Compost leaves and grass clippings. Use phosphorus-free lawn fertilizer based on a soil test. And use less de-icing salt this winter. To learn how these and other steps help make sure only rain goes down the storm drain or ditch and into your lakes and streams, visit myfairlakes.com. myfairlakes.com.
In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
I grew up in the desert, and I came to Madison for the first time, and my eyes popped open, and I said, oh my gosh, what is that? It's beautiful. And my father-in-law said, that's Lake Mendota, and it's only one of several. And over the next 3 days, I fell in love with Madison just as much as I'd fallen in love with my wife.
People come from a long way away to fish in some of the cold water streams in the western part of the county.
I fished them all in Dane County, and pretty much everything within an hour drive of my place. I like good fishing.
Everything's kind of right here in the backyard. You don't have to go far away to have some great fishing or boating.
There's an economic benefit to those lakes, and protecting them, even if you never use the lake and you're not interested, just from an economic impact in the whole area, I think it's important to everybody.
We put several thousand people a year in boats, and when it's not clean, we don't feel as comfortable doing that. So there is an impact on our business.
It's very unique to have these quality of resources, the kind of resources that we have in a very dense urban area.
They're our primary environmental resource and the thing that we have in common that can bring our community together. I think they're our identity.
Stormwater is basically water that can't soak into the ground because there's concrete or asphalt in the way.
The rapid runoff events that occur during a rainfall.
Water that comes off impervious surfaces during a storm event.
When water falls from the sky or in the form of snow melt and leaves the site, that's stormwater.
Lake Mendota has 162 stormwater outfalls that dump pollution that's on the streets and lawns straight to the lake.
The water runs into a storm sewer, which is nothing more than a concrete pipe that dumps straight into the lake. There is no cleaning action there.
Everybody lives on waterfront property. The waterfront is as close as the nearest storm drain.
A homeowner might stand here and say, well, why should I worry about stormwater or erosion control? I live 2 miles from the lake. Well, not really. I mean, the lake essentially starts at the storm sewer inlet on the street. Because once the water gets into there, there's nothing that's going to stop it.
So I think people just need to realize that water flows downhill, and what happens in their backyard can have an impact on the quality of an asset that we all share.
If you look at runoff off of native prairie like this, which is what most of Wisconsin was, at least in this area, the runoff off of this is extraordinarily low. When you turn this into even agricultural land, that would be one step up in the process. Okay, agricultural land still soaks in a lot of water, but not near as much as a native prairie does. And then when you go to urbanscape, hard surfaces, rooftops, driveways, roads, then we really change the hydrologic cycle, and we run off a lot more water, and we run it off a lot more quickly.
Our streams will experience less base flow. All right? That's the flow that occurs in between rainfall events. That's the flow that puts enough water in that stream so the things that live there can live there. That's their house, the water. Whether we have dry weather or wet weather, it's a continuous flow, and that's very crucial to our fisheries and the water quality and the animals that live within the water. So if you reduce the amount of water just rushing off, then more goes in the ground, and that's what keeps that in-between event flow coming.
So when you see some of these natural channels or drainage ways that have been eroded and they're now gullies, one of the reasons for that is that we've sped the water up and we've delivered that water there much quicker than we have in the past.
And a higher proportion of the rainfall in the Midwest has been coming during extreme storm events. And the forecasts with the climate change scenarios are that we will continue to have more of our rain falling in intense storm events.
Flooding and flashiness are terms when we have too much water in too little time. Flashiness means that we conveying the water to a certain point and it's very rapid to rise. Lake Monona I would characterize as being very flashy.
It's much more dramatic when it rains. The water pops up pretty quick. It used to be, it took a little bit while longer to do that. So, that's anecdotal, but it does seem to be an issue.
We see the flow so hard it even washes the fish eggs right out of the stream. The habitat really changes the things that live there. They need certain things for sources of food, a place to raise their young, and so forth. And we're constantly altering that with stormwater because it's rushing into these systems.
The pavement, if it's heated by the sun, will be very hot. The water will absorb that heat and carry it into the stream. And when it's a cold water fishery, it can kill off some of the cold water species, maybe minnows or larvae. Not just the temperature increase, it'll decrease the amount of oxygen in the water.
In river and stream systems, the high flow can cause stream bank erosion that can destroy fish habitat. And then when that sediment gets deposited further downstream, when the water slows down, it can again compromise fish and aquatic life habitat.
During a storm event, water dislodges that soil particle or that contaminant that's on that surface, gets it in suspension, and then transports it to our water bodies.
More water brings more sediment and silt into the system. When it hits the slower water of the lake, it drops out.
All this sand and coarse and fine particulate matter forms islands into the lake. We use sand in the wintertime trying to protect from winter ice and snow. Now we use sand because we don't want to use salt. And of course the chlorides are also carried into the lakes with the storm water.
They've taken cores from the bottom of lakes, and they see a tremendous increase in the types of pollutants that are washing off of our city streets and parking lots and so forth. It's hard to document how many less fish we have because of that, but it certainly will stress things living there if you keep increasing the amount of pollutants all the time.
There's a lot of pet waste and urban runoff and a lot of bacteria with that, and the city is monitoring for bacterial levels in the lakes. And if people put this pet waste into the storm sewers, we have high fecal coliform levels in the lakes, which is a health issue.
Gastrointestinal problems, rashes, eye problems, especially for the bacteria. We see them in the areas where stormwater outfalls are nearby or near creeks or rivers. So there are some beaches that are closing more frequently than others. Oftentimes it's just an isolated area that, you go to the next beach and it's fine.
Heavy metals, phosphorus, other nutrients are all attached to soil particles. So when they leave a construction site in the form of erosion, that's how those things are getting into our water bodies. A construction site that has no erosion control on it will erode at a rate of 30 tons per acre. That's about 3 dump truck loads per acre.
But over the years, we've had a number of serious accidents, if you like, where major erosion events occur off of these areas. When you figure that 25% of the phosphorus coming into Mendota is coming from these very small areas that are in transition, it says that we need to pay a lot of attention to that.
Sediment contains attached nutrients, and a big one that we're concerned about is phosphorus, because that is food for algae in our lakes. When the conditions are right, a lot of it grows at once, and it can produce those soupy, pea-green masses of algae blooms.
It's smelly, it's slimy, and in some instances can be toxic.
Liver toxins, neurotoxins, skin toxins. Oftentimes there's a color, sometimes they float, kind of a greenish, bluish mat that floats on the surface. Just visually looking, you can't tell what's there, so you'd have to look under the microscope. And we may tell about the symptoms or just close the beaches.
So if you have a fertilizer, and now that's the rule here in Dane County, that has 0 phosphorus, it has nitrogen in it, and that nitrogen greens up your grass.
But the fertilizer companies were adding a phosphorus supplement with it, And so we were over-fertilizing our lawns, making the phosphorus levels go even higher.
But an interesting fact of science is that nitrogen in Lake Mendota and Lake Monona is not the limiting nutrient for the algae that are a problem in the lakes. That limiting nutrient is phosphorus.
When people mow their lawn, often they shoot the grass right out into the street, not realizing that when that grass is carried off to the storm drain, it becomes food for algae and makes a mess out of the lake. And the same thing with leaves. A lot of people pile their leaves right in the street rather than on the terrace.
But if the homeowner rakes the leaves into the street, they've immediately put that organic matter and all the nutrients that are going with it right in the main channel flow for these flashy streams that occur in our streets during these intense rain events.
You need to keep water where it lands and soil in its place.
Keep water where it lands and soil in its place.
Keep soil in its place and water where it lands. After that, removing pollutants from the delivery system, and then as a last line of defense, remove the pollutants before they are actually discharged into our water bodies.
For this watershed, Lake Mendota, about 0.3% of the land area is under construction every year, but that 0.3% of the land area contributes almost a quarter of the sediment that gets into the lake. So we know that if we can target a relatively small land area every year with erosion control, that we can do a lot of good in removing sediment from the lake and its associated pollutants.
Hence our erosion control and stormwater management ordinance, which is in effect countywide in all municipalities, cities, villages, towns.
People who are proposing new residential or commercial developments that meet a certain threshold need to have plans for how they control erosion at their sites and also how they manage stormwater in the long term.
When they have a certain amount of soil exposed, they have to have an erosion control plan, and they have to say what practices they're going to use to keep that soil on site.
And one of the things that they use is a diversion berm, and it's kind of like a little berm that runs along the house lots. The berm will kind of catch the water, slow it down. There'll usually be a little rock check dam for the water to filter through. The dirt stays behind.
We've started to see more construction sites cover their site with wood chips, shredded bark, and those kind of things.
So that when that water drop hits, it tends to infiltrate a lot better, and it keeps that soil where it's supposed to be.
We do give them the opportunity to correct mistakes, and we don't like to do enforcement unless we have to, but there are times when it has to be done, and it generally gets the point across pretty quick. So
if you can get out to the curb with a street sweeper between rain events, you do a reasonably good job of picking that stuff up.
In 1 year, we picked up enough sediment from the street that would cover a football field with 1.5 foot of material. The old sweepers of yesteryear would not have that kind of result. So that's one thing that I think is going to have a major impact on receiving waters.
From the little storm inlet that you see in a street, the water just drops in there and it kind of disappears. Well, from there, the water gets carried through the pipe. It'll hit a discharge point where it'll dump into a pond, and the suspended solids kind of sit and they settle that towards the bottom.
There's a reduction in organic material, dead leaves and all that sort of thing, whatever comes in the stormwater. There's a reduction in phosphorus, which is the main nutrient to the lakes. But there's also a reduction in these ponds of some of the heavy metals and other contaminants that we want to keep out of the lakes as well.
The metals and the fertilizers, pesticides and stuff tend to attach themselves to those smaller particles, and those are harder to get out. You need a bigger body of water to slow them down and settle them out. That's one of the things this would do. Now, that's good and bad, right? We settle out these particles, so now, 30 years from now, we're going to have to come back and dredge this whole thing.
In more recent years, we've been pushing an effort to have more infiltration, where we're keeping the water actually on the site, so we're disconnecting these impervious surfaces from the storm sewer network.
This is a pilot project to see if an infiltration garden, a rain garden, works alongside the streets in Madison to infiltrate water from the street. Friends of Lake Lingo wrote it, and the city got the grant.
A lot of newer neighborhoods have detention basins which help treat their runoff. The older neighborhoods like this one, they don't have such a thing. It goes straight to the lake.
It's all the water that comes down on houses
and in the streets, and it gets all this like algae stuff from it. And instead of it going into the lake where we like swim and stuff, it will go into like the rain garden.
And so this is going to be gathering all that stormwater from the pavement and directing it into these rain gardens, where it will then slowly perk down and go back into the aquifer.
A lot of the plants capture phosphorus, nitrogen, that kind of thing, which feed algae and weeds in our lakes. And so we'd rather feed pretty plants in our rain gardens.
Well, I guess I'm interested in doing whatever you can to help the environment. And so this is a little project, but it still might be helpful in the long run.
These are Girl Scouts from Girl Scout Troop. What troop are you guys in?
774.
I can't hear you.
774.
We have quite a few volunteers that the Friends of Lake Winger were able to get us. A lot of the homeowners have helped out and their kids, and which has just been a blast.
There's a business, Henry Simon Furniture, where they have a rain garden, and that kind of treats the water before it gets into the drainage way. And because they have that rain garden, they get a discount on their stormwater bill.
We actually featured it on our Better Lawns and Gutters tour because it was a great example of how when you've got this great big building and your parking lot, that's a lot of impervious surface that catches a lot of rainwater. A lot of people see it as they come in. Plus it looks really nice.
And if everybody had a place where their own personal water could go and managed it that carefully, it doesn't have to be just a big ditch. You can turn it into something beautiful. We turned our stormwater retention into a nice little wetland garden.
We've got this retention basin where it's designed to run from the parking lot and the lawn area to the retention basin and then through a special drain and then slowly out to the next step being the marsh and then, of course, the marsh filtration occurring before it gets to the river.
This rain garden I put in this spring. It comes off the roof of the back of my house. Before I put it in, I had a little gully. Basically, this year I did absolutely nothing. Pulled a few weeds in the spring, and Mother Nature has taken care of the rest of it, and there really are no weeds in it. And it has been doing its job all summer. Fills up with water, and you can go back and look at it after it stops raining, and it's totally absorbed.
Nonprofit groups, watershed association, neighborhood groups, friends groups are all vital to the success of any kind of land treatment, water quality improvements.
There's a plethora of things that these groups do to help water quality in Dane County. And a lot of it is helping raise awareness of stormwater and how whatever's in the streets ends up in our lakes and rivers.
We have some people that are out cleaning up the shoreline they're raking up the weeds, they're picking up garbage, some are going out canoeing and doing it through the waterways that way. We also have people stenciling drain stencils and markers, and they're putting up this marker along our storm drains so that it's an awareness thing.
It catches their eye and they look and what's that? Oh, look at that. Did you know? All the water that goes in here goes right to the lake because a third of the people didn't know that.
Each crew leader should have a couple extra forms with them. So the crew leaders have the instruction manuals, they have the map. I think we have about 75 to 90 volunteers who are doing installations. They're concerned about sustainability issues, and this is a great chance for them to get their hands dirty, so to speak.
They're installing a tandem rain barrel, 2 rain barrels, because we figured there's a lot of water comes down.
We will attach a hose to it and use it in our garden instead of turning the faucet on.
I really like making deliberate choices to live sustainably, and I think this is a really simple way to do that. So,
Friends of Lake Wingra, Friends of Monona Bay, Friends of Starkweather Creek, for the past 3 years have all partnered together to raise awareness about keeping leaves out of the streets.
What we do each year is we put these signs out on commuter streets. There's a website on them, My Fair Lakes, and people get that reminder, oh yes, it's time to pay attention to that. And when I do pay attention to it, I'm helping Lake Wingra.
We have programs that are designed to help regulate stormwater discharges from what we call municipal separate storm sewer systems. Municipalities that are permitted have programs to deal with public education and outreach, construction site erosion control, long-term stormwater management.
17 municipalities in central Dane County, together with the University of Wisconsin and Dane County itself, all got together. The outreach program that resulted out of that partnership is myfairlakes.com. where our mantra is, in Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain. In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
One of the things that we've produced to help folks is this pamphlet of things you can do around the house to help water quality. If you rake your leaves to the curb, keep them on the terrace as much as possible and keep them out of the gutter.
They can be put in big compost bins. They can be really simple ones just made out of a ring of chicken wire. They can be mulched in a number of ways. They can just be put right onto beds.
Another option is going over them with the lawnmower right on your lawn and letting them decompose there, because it's great for your lawn. There's some of your nutrients right there going right back into your lawn. If you mow your lawn and a bunch of grass clippings get blown into the street, just go out there with a broom and sweep them up and throw them back on the lawn. Another one is fertilizers or other chemicals that folks put on their lawn. Some of that overspray will end up in the street gutter and street. And if it's not swept up and put back on the turf where it was intended to be, it's going to get washed right into the storm drain.
Match the nutrient demand in your grass. Don't over-fertilize your lawn. See what's needed. Maybe have somebody do a test on the soil.
The 3 numbers that are on the bag, phosphorus is the middle number. Make sure that's 0, because phosphorus is what feeds the algae.
Point your downspouts towards the grass instead of towards concrete. If you do that, the water will soak into the grass a lot better than it just soaks into the concrete.
Putting it out on the lawn allows it to soak back into the lawn. Lawn needs less water. It doesn't have a chance to pick up those pollutants, so it's a good, easy practice.
Rain barrels hook to your eaves on your house, and then you use that to water your plants.
Even when it's a crummy, rainy day, I run home and see how much water I got. I really look forward to that.
If you have the space and you're so inclined, rain gardens are really nice. You can plant some really nice-looking flowers in there, and it acts as a really nice filter to try and clean up water a little bit.
Another good thing to do is replace turf grass with native plantings. They require a lot less maintenance, freeing up time to do other things rather than mowing lawn. If you're going to be doing a project or you're going to start a garden and you're having dirt delivered, put a tarp over your pile of soil. Make sure that it can't run off if there should be a rainstorm.
Keeping your car so it's not dropping pieces of metal, so it's not leaking fluid, so it's not leaking transmission fluid, antifreeze, all that stuff that you see in pools in parking lots goes into the stormwater system.
Make sure to wash it onto the lawn so that the water can't run off. Don't wash it in the driveway where the wash water is going to go right into the street. Or take it to a car wash that sends its water to the sewage treatment plant. When you're out on a walk or in the yard, just make sure to properly dispose of the pet waste.
Anybody you see carrying a plastic bag while they're walking their dog is improving the opportunities for swimming in the Madison beaches.
Everyone lives in a watershed, and you can go on danewaters.com to learn what watershed you live in. And then you can go to our Friends Group page and find out if there's a Friends Group already established. And if you have other questions or want to know more, go to myfairlakes.com, and we have all sorts of things you can do.
If you see something that you don't think is proper, if you see people dumping waste oil in stormwater inlets, which is a problem, report that to the cities, and we'll try to track it down and make sure it doesn't happen.
And finally, it's very important that we support our local officials for taking positive actions to protect our water resources. It's going to take some money, it's going to take commitment, and it's going to take maintaining these practices and developing new solutions for tomorrow's problems.
The water in Madison is an incredible resource. It really, really does need to be protected.
There's so many great resources here, and I want to be sure that they're around for my kids and my kids' kids.
There's no question in my mind that people in the future will thank us if we get the job done and get off to a real good start now.
It's not other people who need to be doing this. We all have a role to play.
With every group's cooperation and the citizens' cooperation, we can probably make up that time very quickly.
It's the little things that everybody does that you don't really think would make a difference, but they all cumulatively add up.
It's not going to get clean overnight. It's going to take time. But with everybody doing their share, it can happen.
Swimming, boating, fishing, we're extending out the number of years and number of generations where those groups are going to have the same enjoyments that we have today.
some of the benefits that we enjoy today were really made by the decisions people made 50 years ago. The decisions, the actions that we do today will have the big impact on people that enjoy these resources 50 years from now.
And we have started on it. A lot of people are doing a lot of good things. But there's a lot more to do. So we have a lot of work left to do.
That's our cue for a little lesson in elocution. Repeat after me. In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
I can't sing it. You're trying to... see, it says here, in Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
I think you've got it. Well done.
In Dane, only the rain goes down the drain.
I know I'm tone deaf.